So this is the second of two videos on converting units using dimensional analysis. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my Jamboard forward. Yes, we've just done all of this, and I'm going to get to, I went too far here, some more complex unit conversion factors. Did we do that one? Yes, we did that one. Here we are. So here we are with 55 kilometers per hour to, I want that instead in kilometers per minute. Okay, so maybe I want to know, maybe it's like a fairly slow moving object, and so I want to know how many fast moving object, I want to know maybe how many kilometers is it going in a minute. Instead of in a whole hour. So, and that might give me a little bit better information in terms of understanding what's going on in a particular situation. So now these rates of change, whenever we write kilometers per hour, when we write that like that, as with that slash there, what we're really doing is we're representing it as a fraction, right? So, for instance, if I were to say, 55 kilometers per hour, that really means 55 kilometers per 1 hour, right? That is a fraction. And so that is how we're going to approach the dimensional analysis in cases like this, is whenever we see a rate, we're going to immediately change that rate and write it as a fraction instead, because that's going to help us to cancel our units out properly. So if I have 55 kilometers per hour, and eventually I want to end up with units of kilometers per minute. I don't want kilometers per hour, I want kilometers per minute. So do I need to change my kilometers? No. I've got kilometers here, kilometers over here. But what I do need to change are my units of time. And so I'm going to use the same approach as I have before. I'm going to say, well, I need to get rid of those hours. So where do the hours need to be able to cancel? Well, if I were to put the hours right here, I would just have hours times hours. They're on the same side of the fraction. That would give me an hour squared. That is not what I want. So I'm going to not do that. I'm going to put the hours on in the numerator on top, because that way they will cancel appropriately. So my hours divided by hours will cancel out with each other and they'll be gone. So that means that the unit that I want for time in my denominator, I want to be per minute. So I'm going to put my minutes in the denominator here. And so I know for 1 hour there's 60 minutes. And so now to get my final result, all I need to do is to multiply across. So 55 times 1. And then anything in the numerator means that I need to divide by that value. So divided by 60. So working that out for myself, 55 times 1 divided by 60. Of course, the divided by 1 I don't really need to do. And so when I work out that value, I'm just going to round this to 2 significant digits and write that as 0.92 kilometers per minute. And so does that answer make sense? Sure, because if I'm going 55 kilometers in an hour, then in a minute, I'm going to be going almost a whole kilometer, right? So 0.92 kilometers per minute. Okay, so I would like for you to try the next example on your own to see if you're able to do it, and then we'll take it up in a minute. All right, so I've started my setup here. Again, I see that there's a rate here, so I'm setting up my rate as a fraction. And now I'm going to check out what units I have and what units need to be changed. Well, the meters don't need to be changed because I've got meters and meters. But my units of time need to go from seconds into hours. So I need to set up a factor to eliminate that. So in this case, I want to get rid of my seconds, and the seconds are in the denominator. So my seconds are going to go on top here so that they cancel out appropriately. All right, my seconds will cancel with my seconds. But now I need to replace that unit of seconds with the desired unit, and I am looking for hours, so I'm going to put hours on the bottom because I want to end up with per hours. And so the relationship between seconds and hours, well, I know that in 1 hour there are 60 minutes, and there are 60 seconds in a minute, so 60 seconds. And that actually could be its own dimensional analysis piece, right? So there are 3,600 seconds in 1 hour. And so I go ahead and I work this out. You know, again, I'm going to say my 750 times 3,600 divided by 1, which of course is not going to change my value at all. And I'm getting 0.21 meters per hour. Now I'm hoping you caught my little mistake there. It was intentional to see if you were listening. What did I do wrong here? Well, it looks to me like, does this answer make sense? If I'm going 750 meters in 1 second, how can I possibly be going 0.21 meters in an hour? That's not logical. So always look at, whether your answer is reasonable or not. I know that that's not reasonable, so I'm going to go back and check my answer again. So 750 times 3,600 is giving me 2,700,000, which I'm going to write as 2.7 times 10 to the power of 6 meters per hour. Okay, hopefully you did okay with that. And if not, always drop into my Zoom meeting. If it's running live, that is. So now we're ready for you to maybe take a look at trying questions number 2 and 3 in the unit conversion worksheet. Those you should be good to go, and when you're ready, I would pause, try those questions, and then come back and resume the video before moving on to some more example types. All right, so finally to some more rates of change. So whenever we see rates of change, we want to immediately convert that to its fraction form. I'm going to give you an example here. Oops, I think I've got the wrong example, actually. I'm going to move on to the next example. So what I want you to notice here, this is the one I was looking for, is I've got 120 kilometers per hour and meters per second. Now in this case, what's important to note is that I want to change my kilometers to meters and my hours, my per hour, to per second. And so, that means that I'm going to have to maybe do a couple of factors. And maybe you've already thought of a way that you can work this out. If you have, pause the video and give it a try. If you're not sure, watch and I'll carry you through this example. All right, so I'm going to start by listing my current measurement of 120 kilometers per hour. And so what I need to do is eventually end up with meters per second. Right? Which means I need to have meters in the numerator and seconds in the denominator. So I'm going to start by tackling the kilometers, and I need to get rid of my kilometers. So they're going to have to go on the opposite side of the fraction. My kilometers are going to go down here. And what do I want to replace them with? Well, I want to replace them with meters. And by doing that, I'm just going to show my unit cancellation here. My kilometers will cancel. I'll be left with meters, which is what I want. And so now, what is the relationship between a meter and a kilometer? Well, I know that for every 1 kilometer, I have 1,000 meters. All right, so the kilometers have been converted to meters. Now I'm going to move on. Now I also need to get my hours converted into, my per hour to per second. So I'm going to get rid of that per hour by putting the hour on top. And in so doing, that will allow me to cancel this hour with that, okay? An hour divided by an hour will cancel it out. But I want a unit to remain. And so that means that I need to have my per second on the bottom. And so the final step here is is that I need to say, well, how many seconds are there in an hour? What is the relationship here? Well, 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. And in so doing, I am left with seconds as my unit because those hours will cancel. So meters divided by seconds gives me meters per second. Okay, so now finally what I need to do is just go ahead and multiply across. So 120 times 1,000 divided by 1, which, you know, dividing by 1 doesn't change anything. Again, now multiplying by 1, which is not going to change anything, but I'm going to need to divide out that 3,600 because it is in the denominator, right? Anything in the denominator is a division. So you go ahead and I'll go ahead and work through this calculation. 120 times 1,000 divided by 3,600. I'm going to do that, double check my calculation. 120 times 1,000 divided by 3,600. And I'm getting to 2 sig figs, 33 meters per second. Okay, I'm going to give you guys one example to try on your own. And here it is. I want you to try it, and then we'll come back and take up the solution to the problem. Okay, so I have gone ahead and done the setup for this. I want meters per minute to kilometers per hour. And so let's just look and see. I set it up so that my meters were on the opposite sides of the fraction so that they cancel nicely, leaving me with kilometers, which is the unit I want. What's left to do then is to get rid of my minutes. And so my minutes I'm going to get rid of. Since it's per minute, I need to get rid of the minutes in the numerator. And I want units of per hour, and I'm left with units of per hour. So far I've got my units set up properly. And then I've also input the relationship between these units properly as well. So double check that you've done that correctly as well. So that will give me 18 divided by 1,000 because it's in the denominator, but then times 60. So 18 divided by 1,000 times 60 is giving me, I'm getting my raw value as 1.08. If we were considering significant digits, I have 2 sig figs here, so I want to round that to 1.1 kilometers per hour. So hopefully you did okay with that. Now here's one final challenger that I'd like you to try on your own to see if you can figure out how to do it, and then I will come back with the solution. So what I'd like you to do is I would like for you to give this a try. See if you can get from centimeters per second to kilometers per hour. So take a minute or two, and then I'll come back with the solution. Okay, so I'm hoping you notice that what makes this question a little bit more involved is that I'm going from centimeters to kilometers. And so that may be a unit conversion that you want to do directly. I'm going to do it piecewise, and sometimes you can do that. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I know that I want to get rid of centimeters, and I don't know how to get from centimeters to kilometers directly. Well, I'm pretending I don't. So I'm going to get rid of centimeters, but instead I'm going to go and relate it to meters first. And then what I'm going to do next, and that will, by the way, allow me to get rid of my centimeters. But if I stopped there, I'd be with meters only, and I don't want meters. So I need to get rid of those meters and replace them with kilometers. So that's the way I'm going to deal with getting from my centimeters to kilometers. So let's take a look. So I know that, for every 1 meter, I'm going to have 100 centimeters. And I know that for 1 kilometer, I'm going to have 1,000 meters. So there I've set up that conversion. And if I stopped here, what I will have is I'll have my kilometers, but I'll still have kilometers per second. So I want to get that into hours, and so I have one more factor to consider, right? And so I need seconds here. and I want to replace that with hours. And here I can see that, you know, my seconds will divide out. All that's left to do is to say, well, how many seconds are there in 1 hour? Well, there's 3,600 seconds in an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply and divide across. So 25 times 1 divided by 100 times 1 divided by 1,000, and then times 3,600 divided by 1. And of course, those multiplying by 1, dividing by 1, I can skip those steps because that won't change the ultimate result. Okay, so now I'm putting this into my calculator. And I am getting 0.9 kilometers per hour, but now here's a cautionary tale because my original value has 2 sig figs and my final answer here has only 1 sig fig because this leading 0 doesn't count, so I'm going to add in a 0 there to keep the number of significant digits. Now that's about the hardest you're going to see this year and in unit conversions, and when you look at our unit conversion worksheet, some of the ones, I think there's only like a couple of them at the very end, they're at that level, and I would consider that to be sort of the hardest that you'll see at this grade level. Having said that, if you are up for a challenge, what you can do is, where are we? Thursday. There is an optional extra practice worksheet that will get you to work with a whole bunch of unfamiliar units, but still the process is the same. It's just going to get, if you're into that kind of thing, particularly if you're planning on going into the, the sciences, then that will be a good exercise to help you master this concept. So without further ado, I'm going to leave you be to work on your worksheet. Now you should be able to complete all of it and submit it. As always, pop into your Zoom meeting whenever.